Hey guys, Luke here, and I'm here with my brand new 2025 GMC Sierra EV Denali. And you can see it a bit behind me here. Absolutely gorgeous. I love this truck. Let me actually flip this look at her here. So, I mean, just gorgeous, awesome truck. I am absolutely in love with it. And I wanted to get that out of the way kind of early on in this video because the rest of the video is actually going to be a little bit nitpicky and critical on it. But I wanted to really preface that none of the things I'm going to mention are reasons not to buy this truck. I absolutely suggest that you do. It is a phenomenal truck. I would go so far as to say it is the best truck I have ever had. I've been living with it for about 2 months now, and I am just floored. I love pretty much everything about it. But there are some things that I want to point out that are just little things they could be doing to, make it a little bit better. Mostly software things that could be fixed in updates. And that's the kind of stuff that I want to talk about. So I could spend an hour going through all of the amazing things about it, the midgate, the front, the way it puts you back in the seat when you accelerate. But there are 100 videos on YouTube about that kind of stuff already. Please go search Sierra Denali EV and you're going to find all kinds of awesome review videos about all the cool things it does. And I agree with all of them, but that's been done. So today what I want to point out is for some of my fellow owners that we've been seeing in some of the different groups and stuff like that, some of the things that I just think it could do better. And they're all really things that it could be addressed by software update. I apologize for how dirty it is here in the Canadian winter. But really we're going to be touching on things that have to do mostly with the infotainment and things that can be fixed, as I said, with OTA software updates that really could just make it even better, right? And I'm also going to preface that most of the things I'm going to point out are things that my previous trucks didn't even have. And this truck does have, but just could be better, right? So they're not complaints. None of them, as I mentioned, are reasons I wouldn't buy this truck. They're just things that I think I would like GM to be aware of. I hope that my fellow enthusiasts in some of these online groups and stuff like that are going to push out this video, tag people from GM product support, and just try to get some of these things in future updates to make this truck the absolute best that it can be. Some of them are UI things, some of them are features, some of them are just inconsistencies. Yeah, it's just, customization, that kind of stuff. So basically, I mean, the interior is beautiful. We've got this massive touchscreen, which is phenomenal. We've got a DIC, unlike some of the other Teslas and whatnot that don't have center screens. We've got all of that here. Phenomenal stuff. But there's some differences, right? So when we look at like previous Denalis or previous GM products, we would have had more buttons, right? There would have been home buttons and things like that up here. We still have our OnStar buttons, but that's all that's there. We do still have some physical buttons down here we could raise and lower the vehicle. We've got the parking brake. We've got the lane assist. We've got the front opener and the rear tailgate opener and a dimmer. And that's pretty much it for the physical buttons. And then we've got some climate stuff down here that we'll talk about. Everything else is on the screen. And I don't mind that, but there are some certain things that I would like to see kind of back in a physical button. The number one, I think, is the garage door or the universal remote that GM products have, which I think is a fantastic feature. They've traditionally always been up here, right? You get 3 buttons where you can press them and open your garage door. And now they've integrated that into the screen instead. And I don't hate it. It's actually growing on me, but I just think the physical buttons were a little bit better. So that's just kind of one little nitpick, but it does work fine on the screen. I'll kind of show you what I mean by that. Let me see if I can zoom this out a little bit here, get a better view. Yeah, there we go. So, and I apologize if the screen doesn't pick up quite well sometimes on camera, but I think it's actually going to be okay. So the first thing that someone's going to talk about is obviously just the look of the infotainment screen. Obviously if you're comparing this like a Rivian or a Tesla, it's not quite as, futuristic EV design language. I think that's by design from GM, right? We're not looking at necessarily early adopters here. This is a Denali. They, of course want to appeal to EV buyers, but they also want you to be able to, my grandfather should be able to jump in this from his previous gas Denali and be comfortable, right? And this very much is that. This is very much a GM interior. It's modern, but it is also what you would expect from a GM. Like this software looks exactly like it does on the gas Tahoe or Yukon rather, right? So that kind of stuff is to be expected. But there are some things that I think we could do better here, right? So first of all, we've got all of our apps, of course, right? This is a Android Auto-based infotainment system. So you can go into the Play Store and you can download any apps that you want and you can install them on the display. And I've got all of the black and white ones here, the ones that come with it, and all the colored ones here are the ones that I've downloaded from the Google Play Store. And that's great. It works fine. You can take them and you can rearrange these. You can press, just like your cell phone, you can press and hold on this and you can move it around to different sections. And that works fine as well. But there are some customizations that maybe you're lacking, right? So for example, there's a couple of buttons across the top here, like where you can go, you have a home button that brings you back to the home screen. You have a button that brings you to like a split window. And then those two are permanent, they can't be moved. But the other two, you can drag and change them out if you want to. So I've got music and camera there, because those are two things I like to access on the fly. But I'd also like to probably have my maps up there. And I can't, there's only room for two, you can't do a third. I don't know what the limit should be. Is it 10? Is it 12? Obviously, there's not a lot of room there, right? So for me, I'm looking for 3 things. I can only do 2. I feel like I'm short 1. But there are some other spots maybe where those can be, and we'll talk about that. There's some unused spaces, and nobody can seem to figure out what they're doing with those particular spots. But for the most part, I like this. In terms of actual features, so I'm going to go into the charge settings for a second. Where we got that here, so charging. And there's some cool stuff here. So first of all, when you go into the charging menu, and this is one of those UI things that I'm not 100% sure what would be the solution for, but if you look at like the preferred charging times here, I can turn this on and off and that's fine. But there's actually customization there. And if I didn't know, I'm not sure that I would know to find that. It doesn't show you anywhere that you're supposed to click on this, but if you do, it's actually a button, and this is where you set your preferred charge times, right? So maybe that's just me, but I feel like that's not clear. It took me a few minutes to find that. Now that I know it's there, it's fine, but I don't know if you'd know if you didn't know. So that's just kind of maybe a little nitpick, but that feature works well. We've also got the charge scheduler. And this is where you can put in different days of the week, what time you want your vehicle to be either charged by or preconditioned by. And preconditioned means it warms up the battery. It also warms up the interior of the cabin, right? So you can see here I have mine set to 24 degrees. This is Canadian, so it's 24 Celsius. And so by 10 a.m. on these dates, or by 8:45 on these dates, so on and so forth, this vehicle will be warmed up, ready to go for me. And that's an awesome feature, right? So my previous Denalis, any other vehicles, I don't know of any gas vehicles that have this option. Maybe there are, I could be wrong. I know it's a pretty common feature in EVs, but I don't think it's at all something that happens in gas vehicles, right? Of course, you can remote start, or you can start by the app. But there's no scheduler. So I set this to 10 a.m. because that's what time I leave for work. And I just get up in the morning and get in there, and the truck is warm and ready to go, and snow's melted off here in Canada, and I drive to work, and I absolutely love that feature. But it only allows you to set 1 time per day. So again, this isn't a complaint. No other vehicle, I think, does more. But if you're going to have a scheduler, why can't I set an unlimited amount of times, right? So it's great that it's ready for me to go to work every morning, but I also leave work around the same time every day, and I got a remote start from my office, which of course is normal, right? But if the schedule is in here, why can't I set a morning time and an afternoon time so that it warms up when I leave work too, right? So that's just kind of something I would like them to see do, but it doesn't. It allows 1 time per day. I can have up to, I guess it's 7 different schedules, because I can set a different time every day, but only 1 per day. So that would be nice if you're able to set that as well. And this works in concert with the departure time as well as your preferred charge times from the last screen. So here in Ontario, I've got lower electricity rates from 11 p.m. till 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. So it knows my preferred times is to charge between those times. It'll charge near the end of that window, so the battery still kind of has some of that residual heat from charging, but then it warms it up between 9 and 10, so it's ready to go for me. Which again, it's an awesome feature. I just like it to warm up again around 4 o'clock. So that's something I would like to see added. Moving on from the charge times, again, we have all the apps. We have the built-in navigation, which is Google Maps, and it works really well. It's super accurate at predicting the charge status. It knows obviously what my charge status is now, but it also predicts what the charge status is going to be when I get to where I'm going. And if I don't have enough to make it there and back, it'll suggest a charger and get the battery ready for charging on the way. All those things works super, super well. My one gripe with Google Maps, and this has nothing to do with GM or with this truck, is that they don't seem to ever be up to date on things like speed cameras and stuff like that. So some of you might know that Google actually also owns Waze, which is another traffic app, and Waze does a phenomenal job at this. Here in my city, they only have so many speed cameras, and they move them around every month. And Waze always, the day they move, knows where they are and warns me about them. Google Maps is still telling me they're in places they were 6 months ago. So they're pretty good on user-reported stuff like live police and things like that, or road construction, but it doesn't tell me about enforcement cameras. I mean, it does, it warns me, but it doesn't know where they are. I don't know why they don't use the same database as Waze, which they own, but they don't. For whatever reason, Waze has got this figured out and Google doesn't. So for that reason, I prefer to use Waze, but unfortunately Waze is not as well integrated into the vehicle as Google Maps is. So you're kind of a toss-up, which feature do you want to lose, right? And that's not Waze, or so that's not GM's fault either, actually. That's Waze's fault. The reason I can tell you that is because other apps have access to this information. I guess it's just Waze has not updated their app to take advantage of the vehicle's API or whatever the case may be. So this is able to read the state of charge. If I go into Waze, for example, I'm going to block my address here before I do that. Too late. Anyway, no worries. So, you know, Waze works well, but you can see there's no state of charge. It doesn't know what my charge is at, doesn't know what my charge is going to be. And you can say, okay, well, that's because it's a third party and it's not the built-in app. But if I went to a Better Route Planner, which is another app that I downloaded from the Play Store, this one does know my state of charge. I don't remember how to bring it up here, but oops, I need to do all that. Anyway, I don't know how to show you, but this one does. It will route based on my current state of charge. It'll tell me where I need to be when I get there. Usually it shows me in the bottom hand corner here, so I'm not sure. There it goes. It just takes a second to come up. So it knows my current state of charge, and if I put in a destination, it will tell me. So clearly the vehicle does make that information available to the app developers. Waze, just for whatever reason, even though its parent company in their Maps app does it, they don't. So if Waze either added that support, I would use that all the time, or if Google Maps had better support on traffic cams and things like that, then I would use that all the time. But as of right now, you're kind of flipping back and forth depending on what you're doing, and I just would like any of them to have all the features. But that's on the app developer side, I suppose, more than it is on the truck side really at all, but it's just something worth pointing out. Getting back to the UI though, and the things that really are GM's responsibility is going to be some of these inconsistencies that I was talking about. So we can map some of those buttons there, but there's additional buttons down here that are blank and do nothing. And we cannot drag issues to those. So I would like my map to be one of these third buttons up here. I can replace those two, but I can't put a third one. But maybe I could put it here. No, I can't. Those ones are blocked off and they do absolutely nothing. And if you look at anybody on the different forums and whatnot, no one's been able to determine what those are supposed to do. They don't seem to have any function, and we can't seem to customize them. So that's something that would really be nice. Is it a deal breaker? No, but it would be really cool to be able to customize some of those buttons. And for some reason, that's just not a function that we have here currently. So the buttons on this side, these are actually responsive. So depending on what I'm doing at the time, the buttons will offer different functions, but I think is actually quite cool. So right now I'm parked and it gives me the option to obviously to turn my truck off because it's on, or to extend. So before I get out of the vehicle, I press that. It's going to keep my truck on for 60 minutes. Because as you might know, when you pop out of an EV, most of the time they just shut off, right? There's no on or off button. When you get in, they get on. When you get out, they get off. But if I want to keep it running, maybe my kids are in the car and they're older, or my pet's in the car, something like that, and I want to keep the AC on while I pop into the store, I can press that button and then it will stay running for 60 minutes while I'm in the store. So that works well. But when I put into gear, that goes away because that's not a function I do it when I'm driving, right? So the response is depending on what I'm doing, which is awesome. There's also some geofencing capabilities to this. So I talked a little bit earlier about the garage door remote buttons being on the screen now, and I can find those in the controls menu. But when I drive onto my street, it pops up there and pushes one of these buttons out of the way and says, okay, we know you're near your home, you might want to open your garage door, and I can press that button. And that is very handy. But when I put it into park, I have these ones and these fill it up, so that pushes the garage door into the overflow. Which again, it's not a big deal, but I just think it'd be easier if it was back up on the, the bolster instead of being buried in there. The one thing I don't know is, obviously when we had hard buttons, we were limited to 3 garage door remotes. I only really ever use 1, but if I was someone maybe at a 3-bay garage and another one at work or something like that, I may want more. Now that they're on the screen, maybe I can program in unlimited ones and the buttons are responsive. I don't know if that's the case, but if so, that's probably a good reason to have them on the screen. So I'll maybe give them that one. But next to those buttons, there's another one here that literally does nothing, right? So maybe this overflow button could at least be on that one. I don't know, but I've yet to see any time where anything's come into that space or either of these 2 spaces. So that just seems odd that those cannot be used for anything. Below that, of course, we've got HVAC controls, and these are both touch as well as physical buttons, which I think people really like. Personally, I really only use the temperature up and down, because this is an up and down toggle to change that. But everything else I tend to do on the screen. Even though I can turn the auto on and off from there, for some reason I just do it that way. But it gives me both choices, and that's totally fine, right? So I appreciate they have that. They have the physical volume knob, and that works really well. But here's where we get into more of some of those inconsistencies I was talking about. And again, none of these are big deals, but they're also a very basic thing that if you've ever developed an app or been involved in any kind of a UX design, you wouldn't do. So I'm not sure where the disconnect is. Maybe GM had multiple different people working on this, wherever the thing is, but they just don't all behave the same way. So some people have complained that the headlight button, for example, is on this screen. I don't have a problem with this at all. If people want a physical button for it, I leave my headlight on auto 100% of the time. So I could care less about this. Plus, it's really easy to get to. I don't have a problem with it at all. But the headlight one actually works how I would expect. So we have a headlight button, we press it. Obviously, we can change the setting. But if I press it again, it goes away, right? That makes sense. Everything looks great so far. But if I go to my heated seat, for example, if I press on my heated seat, and then I press on it again, it doesn't go away. So I press here and I change my setting and I want to close it. I can't close it. I've got to wait for that to time out. So if I had the map on or something and I was trying to check my seat and then do something else, I can't press any other buttons because I'm waiting for that heated seat to go away. And again, it's not a big deal. I just don't know why this one I can close and this one I can't, right? They really should be exactly the same way. I can actually open this one and then open this one and close this one, and I still haven't gotten this one to go away, right? It only takes like a minute. It's not like a big deal. I just don't know why the UI is not the same. And then if you get into this one over on this side, this is the additional controls menu. And this one operates a third different way. So when I press this one, this is a full screen menu. And you'll notice that it's actually went over top of the top bar. So I no longer have my home button or my map button or my music button, camera button. They're all covered by this. And this one never times out. And I don't know if it should or shouldn't, but I do think if I press this, I should be able to close it, right? That's how I opened it. I can't. So I pressed it to open it. I have to go to the X to close it. So now I have 3 different menus that open and close 3 different ways. And that's just not good design, right? Pick a function and make everything operate the same way so people can get used to what buttons do. Every time I press one, I'm like, okay, I'm done with that. I go, nope, I got to go over here. And you figure it out. It's not a big deal. It really shouldn't be that way, right? On this screen, going back to that, you have multiple pages here and you can drag things around here, but you can't drag things from here onto the main screen. Some of them are, like the camera one, the park assist, some of those are already on the main screen as well, right? If I scroll down here, there's my park assist, there's my camera, but other ones are not. And if I want them to be, I can't make them. They're only on this screen. So I don't know why that is. I should be able to drag them around or reset my home screen if I want to. I can't. If I go to the See More controls button, once again, I'm on here. That button's now gone. I got to go back and then close, or I guess I could just close the whole thing. But again, just not quite the same, right? If I go into my cameras, for example, now this again goes full screen and it gives me the X to close it. You know, if I was in my map, for example, and I just wanted to pull my camera up, and then go back to my map, or maybe go to my music, or some people just drive with their camera on, right? And I want to go to my music. This bar could at least be shorter so I could still have this consistency of those buttons up here so I can flip in and out instead of having to go there and then close that out, right? So I think this top bar should probably be consistent across every app, right? So at least those couple of shortcuts I have are always accessible, but they're not. So you just kind of got to figure out how that works and go in from there. There are other screens that do that though, right? So for example, if I go to this climate screen here, this one here has the top bar, right? So now I can go from this one actually never times out. And also I should be able to close it from here, but I can't. And there's no X. So on this one, to get out of it, I have to press the home button. Right? So again, it's not complicated, but why aren't they the same? Why don't they all have an X, or why don't they all time out? Or the biggest one for me is if I open it with this button, why can't I close it with this button, right? And I know that they know that because this one I can, and the rest of them I can't, right? So that's, again, it's nitpicky stuff, but it's just kind of bad UI that is unnecessary and super, super easy to fix just by software update, I would think, right? So that's kind of why we're talking about this and hoping that GM will kind of take note of some of this stuff and maybe fix some of it in the future. The other stuff is really going to be about the customization, and most of that comes down to the DIC. So I'm glad we have a DIC, or driver information center, but there's some weird stuff, right? So if we look right now, this is the default screen when you first look at it. So I've got my temperature right here. It's 1 degree Celsius here in Canada. It's about, what, 33 degrees or so for you Americans. I've also got the temperature up here, and then I've also got the temperature over here. I had the time there too, and I have the time over here. So I don't need the temperature 3 times. I probably don't need the time twice, right? Now, luckily I can change this, but I can only change it to a couple of different things. And that's where some of the customization is not, this I would say is the one thing that was better on my previous Denali than on this one. Everything else, you know, I got some nitpicks, but I still think this truck is better than before. The customization on this screen was better on my Denali. I used to be able to open up the menu and say, okay, left side, what do I want to see here? Scroll through my options list. Middle, what do I want to see? Scroll through my options list. Right side, what do I want to see? Scroll through my options list. This one doesn't have that. There's none of the buttons on the steering wheel or anything. It's got all the basic buttons for, you know, cruise control and heated steering wheel and all those things. But none of those buttons except for one have anything to do with the DIC. I can flip through different DIC pages. This one's pretty cool with the map on it. I like on the Cadillac, so they get the camera view there. This doesn't have that, but having the map there is pretty cool to follow along if you want to do that. But nothing is customizable on here. The next page just has your kind of driver information, but nothing is customizable here. And then the last page is kind of just like a blank kind of basic one, and nothing customizable there either. On the main screen, there is, as I mentioned, some customization, but it's not as good as I would like. So if we look, first of all, on the right-hand side, we've got our music, right? Which is awesome. I can follow along with, you know, see what songs I'm on. Of course, on the back of my steering wheel, I've got my volume up and down. I can change tracks or change stations or whatnot. That's all great. But if I go into my map and I set a destination, so let's say I'm going to go to work, and I hit start, map works great. On top of the music is the Google Maps direction overlay, which I kind of like. I don't have to look at my middle screen. I'm getting my directions there. I'm also getting them. I don't know if you can see my heads up display. I don't think you can, maybe a little bit, but I get the directions in both places. I'm happy with that. That works really well, but it overtook my music, right? So I would pick to put my music on the left-hand side and my maps on this side. That's not a choice I have. Music and maps are both docked to the right. I can only have one at a time, even though I still have this wasted space over here on the left. Right? So that's just not, I want to be able to customize that. Again, does it matter so much? No, but why can't I, right? There's just no good reason for that. Now, if I exit out of my navigation, I'm gonna have my music back, that's fine. There are things I can customize here, like I said. So I can go into, most of them are under vehicle status. And let's say I want to do my tire pressure here. I get the option to add to driver display, and that puts it over here, and that's fine. I can take that one off and I can go into my energy usage, and I can do my basic energy use, and I can add that to driver display, but it goes to the same spot. So again, I can't have tire pressure and energy usage. I can have one or the other, and I can have my maps up, assuming I've got a destination set, but I can't pick and choose maybe tire pressure on this side and maps on this side, or music and directions, right? I can remove that one, and I can go back to here, and I can do my efficiency, which changes that as well. And I think the last one I can do is my trip meter. So those are the 4 options I have for the left-hand side. And then the right-hand side are music if I know directions, and directions if I have directions up. And that's the extent of the customization. Which again, none of those things are bad. I would pick probably music on my left, maps on my right, and I'd leave it at that. And if I didn't have a map on, I'd probably put my tire pressure on the right or something like that, right? But it does not give me those options. And that's just, that's up to me. When I'm on some of these other screens, I would probably like to be able to also maybe customize, or my hand there, maybe customize some of the stuff in here, even though I have my map up. That's kind of secondary. If I could at least customize the main screen, I would be more happy with that. But it doesn't give me that option. So that's just something I think GM could easily do. The other thing that I've heard some people mention, so this truck does have a memory recall. So if I get in with my key, it knows where my seat's supposed to be. It knows where my mirrors are supposed to be. It has my profile in the infotainment and stuff like that. But it does not, and of course it remembers all those things. So if I press memory 2, it'll move the seat, move the mirrors, change all my profiles, but it doesn't for some reason move the HID, the heads up display. So this is an electronically controlled heads-up display. When I go into the menu, I can go to my HUD and I can physically move it up and down, right? Because depending on where your chair is, you may need to move it so you can see it. So it's software controlled, so there's no reason it's not tied into the profiles, but it's not. So if I get in with my wife's key, the seat's higher, the mirrors are in a different spot, but the heads-up display stays where it was, and she would have to move it physically. And if I get back in, all my stuff moves except for the heads-up display, and I've got to move that back. So again, really nitpicky, but everything else does. Why isn't that connected to the rest of the profile, right? Not really sure. The other customization that personally I would like to see, and it's really not as big of a deal, but this is like the quadrant screen where it shows you 3 different things at a time, and I kind of like this. But I really like, of course, having this giant map when I have that up here. So it's really cool. It's a big display. It looks really good. When I'm on this grid display, I find the map maybe a little bit small. I would like the ability. So first of all, you can customize these. Like if I wanted to, put my audio up here, I could change that. But then when I could here, I couldn't put the map down here. So certain things are available in certain quadrants, which is fine to a point. I'm going to put my music back down there and then put my map back up here. But what I think I'd like to do is be able to take this and maybe drag it down so I can make the map a little bit bigger and the audio a little bit smaller, or vice versa. It doesn't give me that kind of customization. So that would be kind of nice to see, but I don't think it's quite as important as some of the other things I mentioned. Just kind of worth considering as far as that's concerned. The other thing I'd like to see, I think, because I mentioned I have my music and my camera dots up here. The reason I do that is because this, obviously when you put it in reverse, the camera comes up as every other vehicle does, right? But when you're going forward, the camera, I believe, is in my last Denali, the front camera would come up if you got like dangerously close to something in the front. But for me, it's way too close. Like you got to be a hair away from the vehicle in front of you before the camera pops up. So I pretty much, just as a rule, when I'm pulling into like a parking space or whatnot, I hit the button to bring the camera up so I can see what's happening. And that works fine. Other than the fact that you then can't, switch back to your music or anything like that. You have to close it. But I would like the camera I like a setting where I can say if I'm under 5 miles an hour or something like that, that I would be able to have the camera come up automatically. And if it did that, then I probably wouldn't need a camera button. So maybe I can put my map there instead. But it doesn't have that option as far as I can tell. So that's something I would like to see as well. And then in terms of the overall interface, I think I touched on this in the beginning, but, do you want this to be very familiar, I think, right? For GM vehicles, for their older customers, things like that. And I think that's necessary, but I also think maybe they could give an option where you can go into like the settings and configure, maybe you have a GM Classic and a modern EV skin or something like that, right? Which they don't have. But I actually am fine with this design. I don't really have a problem with it. I think some people would like to see it be a bit more modern. And I definitely understand why you don't want that for your 7-year-old customer, but I think you could give people the option if they want to. But I'm less concerned about that and more concerned about getting some of these UI issues to function the way that I'd like, and just getting some more apps. The other thing is there's no app for like YouTube or Netflix, and that's not on GM to create. They should be in the Play Store, but my understanding is GM blocks them. And I don't know why that is. They're available to other manufacturers. They are definitely in the Play Store, but I guess GM gets the right to decide which apps you can see in your vehicle. Obviously, nobody thinks we should be driving around watching YouTube or Netflix on the road, but the system is definitely smart enough to know when you're in park and when you're driving. There's just regular functions like even typing things into the map. You can only do by voice when you're driving, and if you're parked, then you can type it with the keyboard and stuff like that. So it knows when you're moving. So there's no reason it couldn't have an access to a YouTube app or a Netflix app, at least when I'm parked or charging or waiting for my kids at school drop-off or something like that. Whereas they could gray out and not work when you're driving, right? But they don't give you those options. I'm not sure why. And that would be really good. I usually have my phone or my tablet or something, so it's not the end of the world, but we got this big, great, bright screen here. I would certainly throw on a movie or something while I was waiting for my kids, and I definitely can't do that, unfortunately. But I think really that's it, guys. I mean, otherwise, like I said, none of these things are reasons I wouldn't buy this truck. It is a phenomenal truck. I am super, super happy with it. I just think that, if we really kind of keep pushing this out there and tagging GM and things like that in it, maybe we can get some of these things addressed by software update, and then the truck will be even better. But either way, I really love it. I'm really happy with it, and I hope you all get a chance to check one out. Peace out, guys.